Welcome to another episode of the Everyday Expertise Podcast. I'm your host, Logan Martin, and I hope that today's conversation will expand your knowledge. Before I introduce this week's guest, I want to say a little bit about an upcoming episode. For episode 15, I am planning to invite my brother, Ricky, back to the show for a Q&A segment. We are inviting you, the audience, to send us questions that we will read and answer on episode 15. I'll be providing more information about this at the end of this episode, so I will leave it at that for now. Today I'm excited to welcome Logan Martin to the show. Logan is my cousin, and like a few previous guests, we'll be talking about his work with Martin's Family Fruit Farm. Logan and I spent years working with his dad, selling produce at the local farmers market. We probably were not always the best salespeople, but our skills did slowly develop as the years went by. During slow times, we always enjoyed conversing and learning from each other. It was great to have the chance to sit down with Logan again and hear his story and the things that he has learned from his experience in sales. I hope that you will enjoy it and learn from his expertise. Welcome, Logan, to Everyday Expertise. It's really good to have you here.
Hey, Roland. It's good to be here.
All right. So tell me, what does your work look like currently?
Yeah, so currently I am working at Martin's Family Fruit Farm, like a few of your other guests here. And so I would be in the sales department. So my title is Sales and Business Development Manager. Mm-hmm. So that basically includes selling things and then managing the account afterwards.
Okay.
So making sure that the customer remains happy through the entire process. So my focus is less on fresh apples and more on our value-added products. Mm-hmm. So apple chips, apple juice, particularly bulk that we would sell to craft cideries,
okay,
and apple slices and dices that we would sell for commercial bakeries.
Okay. So you said that you're both trying to find new customers or bringing new customers in different ways, as well as continuing to work with customers and keeping that relationship going. Is that what I heard you saying there?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. Do you have a favorite of those products that you work with, or does it not matter which one?
So my preference is probably apple chips at this point.
Okay.
Partially because it's the newest of the ones that I'm working on. I've been working with juice for quite a while. I've been working with slices for the last 3 years, but apple chips have really started to come into over the last year. So
you personally really have just started working with them. Like they've been around a lot longer.
They've been around since 2012.
Yeah.
But for me personally, I've started having more of a focus over the past year on them. And so I enjoy that. And we'll talk more about this throughout the whole thing, but it's a different sales process going with more of the commodity type thing.
Okay.
With juice and slices rather than the consumer product. So it's a different sales process.
Yeah.
And I enjoy that.
Yeah, no, I'm interested in hearing more about that because I hadn't thought about from your perspective how that would look different for those different products. So that's that's interesting. So I like to hear what kind of some of the things that you do. So is there anything you can share about what a typical day looks like, or some of the activities that you do on a regular basis?
Yeah, so typical day is a lot of email, phone calls, customer visits, that type of thing. Might be filling out paperwork if we're getting close with a new customer, just to get us set up in their system. Might be researching new potential opportunities. Mm-hmm. But most of my job, I would say, it's maybe just a bit of a number, but let's say 85% is more managing the accounts rather than looking for new ones, particularly during COVID. COVID isn't a great time to try and sell new products to retailers. They're not super excited about that.
Right. Is that because, would a lot of new customer work, finding new customers, is that done face-to-face more so, or is that not the reason that it's gone down during COVID here?
Yeah, so some is, as far as kind of initial product presentations and that type of thing.
Right.
But it's more that most retailers are still focused on they're still focused on their core items. They want to make sure that those items are taken
Yeah.
care of. A lot of retailers, like their head office people, are still working from home, and so it makes it harder. And so they're not really looking for new products.
Yeah.
They're more focused on status quo right now.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to introduce a new product like Apple chips to a retailer who isn't looking for new products.
Yeah.
So that being said, there's been probably more just managing accounts right now.
Okay.
More day-to-day operations, working with our operations team and productions team to make sure that orders are filled out and that type of thing.
Yeah. Would you say that more you do more of them reaching out to you if there's a problem or something like that you take care of, or do you do some, you just check in and make sure that things are going well with ongoing customers and that kind of thing?
Yeah, a bit of both. Okay. Obviously I hear about it when there's a problem.
Right, yeah.
And then we get to try and fix it, which is lots of fun.
Yeah.
But then other than that, it's staying in touch. It's, keeping an eye. If I notice that we haven't gotten an order recently, then, calling them up, emailing them saying, hey, what's up? Can we be expecting something soon, or is there anything that we can do for you? That type of thing.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's great. Before we get into a little deeper into your specific work and the things that you're involved in, I like hearing from my guests if they have hobbies or interests outside of work. So is there anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, so I'm doing my MBA right now as well, on top of working. So I don't have a ton of time for hobbies, I find, between school and work and family, and trying to make sure that everything takes care of, and, the odd time hanging out with friends or hopping on a podcast. So I don't have a ton of time for hobbies right now, but I love sports, pretty much any sports, but particularly baseball. I enjoy reading, and that's something I still can do just because of audiobooks and that type of thing. So I really enjoy reading.
On your commute, is that when you... Yeah, that's handy.
I usually listen to them a little faster than the speed, so I can get through them a little quicker, which is fun.
Nice. What's your speed?
With the audio app that I use, I'm usually at 1.4.
Okay. Oh, so you can break it down to one, like...
Yeah,
hey, that's handy.
Well.
Yeah.
If you get too much, or for me anyway, if I get too much higher than that, I'm not retaining anything.
Okay. So you found that maximum point where you can get the most out of it.
I also find that it depends on the book. Some people read quicker than others.
Oh, yeah, that
so
makes
sense. So I will
sense.
have to adjust it.
Yeah, so it depends on the reader maybe even. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And then I enjoy cooking.
Oh, yeah.
A couple years ago, I started smoking some meat, and I really enjoyed that, but I haven't really kept up with it.
Okay.
So it's the type of thing that it takes a lot of time.
Okay.
It's basically your entire Saturday, and I just have a homemade little smoker. So,
okay. Just in your backyard, or?
Yeah. It's called an ugly drum smoker.
Okay.
And that's an accurate name.
Oh, it looks like an ugly drum.
So Ainsley doesn't love having it just sit on the deck. So it's tucked away right now. Nice. But that's something, when I have more time, I'd like to get back into that a little bit.
Yeah, nice. You got to have me over for some smoked meat sometime when you're doing that. Oh, that's great. Just on your MBA, so you're doing part-time schooling for more business classes and that kind of thing, or?
Yeah, that's correct. So part-time schooling, MBA is Masters of Business Administration. Mm-hmm. So I'm taking 2 classes per semester.
Okay.
Through the summer, the whole way through for 3 1/3 years.
Okay.
And I just finished my first year, so nice. I'm a third of the way done. Feels good.
Excellent. Yeah. Do you have is it to help you in your current job, or are you thinking of opportunities beyond what you're doing right now with it, or?
So I would say it's a couple different reasons, but one is definitely to help me with my current job, to improve my knowledge base there, to bring that back to Martin's. And that's something I've enjoyed over my undergrad, in that I can learn something one day and take it into work the next.
Right, because you're working while you're doing the studying.
So I'm finding that I'm retaining a lot more, and just and I can filter out what's useful and what isn't a lot easier too.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I find with the master's program, rather than when I was an undergrad is that if a prof says something, I have something to base that off of now. So if they say something, I'm like, that's really nice in theory, but not sure it actually works that way in the real world.
Yeah.
Whereas in undergrad, as a, late teen,
Yeah.
if a prof says something, well, it must be true type thing. So, it's fun to kind of be able to, just filter that out a little bit more as well.
Yeah. It's good. Have you had to become more efficient as a student as well, since you're doing it part-time while working full-time than when you were in undergrad, or?
Well, we'll talk a little bit about
Okay.
my undergrad and my personal story, but
Gotcha.
yeah, for sure. It's night and day. The online piece is it's another fun aspect of it that I'm sure you're dealing with, and I heard one of your other podcasts as well, talking with a professor about that. And
Yeah.
so
Is that the way it's going to be for you this fall?
So this fall, and I'd be surprised if it changes for the winter as
Yeah,
well.
that's what I'm thinking too. Yeah.
So part of that's nice. I can be home with family
Yeah.
for those extra 2 nights. But the actual learning experience, it's not the same.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is maybe a good time to dive a little bit into your story, and I'm interested in hearing what you have to share about what got you to where you are now. So I guess my first question is here, was it always your plan to work at Martin? So family business. We both kind of grew up with our dads being heavily involved, and you've continued working in it for at least most of your career, and I worked there for a couple years full time before doing other things. So I'm curious, what's been your plan with working with Martins, with how it's worked out?
Yeah, so I saw this question, and it made me think through the whole thing. I don't think it was necessarily always my plan to work at Martin's, but I didn't necessarily have another plan either. I would say, I worked at Market ever since I was St. Jacob's Farmers Market, ever since I was a kid. And there's parts that I liked. I enjoyed the interactions with customers. I enjoyed, just working with people like you. We had a lot of fun, and looking back, there's a lot of good memories. There's also a lot of parts I didn't like about it. Mm-hmm. And at the time, Martin's was an apple packer, and that was pretty much it.
Right.
Apple grower and packer.
Right. Pretty much that one product.
So as far as looking at opportunities, I wasn't sure what I saw there, but I also didn't know what else. I had thoughts of becoming a teacher.
Okay.
I remember at one point I was looking into journalism, and that type of thing. Pretty happy I didn't get into that the way that industry is. It's hard to get jobs there.
Yeah, you're not getting any more either.
Yeah, and then always had sports in the back of my mind as well, but didn't really have a plan at all. And then after high school, an opportunity came up to go to University of Guelph for agriculture business. So I took it, but again, so my thought was, potentially Martin's. But I don't really know. It seems like it should be the next step. And so I did it. Yep. I wasn't the most motivated student.
Okay.
I would say I picked up some pretty bad habits in high school. I was smart enough to get by with minimal amount of work.
Right, yeah.
And you can do that in high school if you're smart enough, and you can still pull pretty good grades, and I did. So I maintained some of those bad habits in undergrad. And so second year of university, I don't remember if it was the fall or winter semester, but I failed 3 of 5 classes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah. So I even failed in passing classes.
Yeah. Wow.
40%. Yeah. So that was I would say one of the lower points in my life. Looking back, it was really good in the fact that it was definitely a personal failure of mine, and I'm of the mindset that personal failures can be good things. You have to deal with the consequences of them, and they always have consequences. But for me, it was an opportunity to learn and grow from that. And so today, now, I might have a couple unproductive days at work where I'm like just not being as productive as I can. And so one way I could look at it is like, it's not a big deal, right? Everyone's unproductive at times. Another way that I can look at it is, well, I know what happens if I do that too long, as I've done that, and I failed 3 of 5 classes.
Right.
So if I keep doing that here, the same thing's going to happen in a different context. And so being able to experience that in university helped me be able to learn and grow and become a better person and recognize, so these are some of my tendencies. I have to work really hard at not letting myself get to this point again.
Right.
So looking back now, I would say that, not necessarily a good thing, but it was certainly a learning experience. And certainly something that shaped me. Back then, I didn't necessarily think that.
Did you consider stopping?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
100%. But I had a few conversations with a few people, and they encouraged me that this isn't the end of the world. Yeah, it's a stumbling block or of some sort, and you messed up, but so you can either give up, which would be even more, or you can just pick yourself up and try harder next time and actually change. And it doesn't happen overnight. When you have bad habits ingrained in you, it takes a long time to work through those. But I graduated and graduated with good enough marks that I'm now doing my MBA. So that's
so was that a turning point in your university then, as far as like, you said it wasn't perfect after that, but was there a change in how you approached classes and how hard you worked, etc.?
Yeah, for sure. Because I had a new appreciation of what I needed to do to pass and to succeed. So it was a turning point. That being said, some of the stuff that I was learning or going, the classes, I still didn't have a ton of interest in. It was, when you don't have a ton of interest in something, it's really hard to pay attention for a 3-hour lecture. Or a 1-hour lecture. Right. So I still sometimes struggled with some of that, but it seemed like the right thing to do to kind of continue on that degree. I didn't know what else I would do. I didn't have something else that was really a burning passion of mine. Like, well, let's finish this up. And so I finished it up, went into Martin's. So I started there full time in 2012.
Okay. That would have been right after graduating from university. Yeah.
And that was also the year that Martin's didn't have a crop.
Oh, yeah. The frost year.
The frost year. So not a great time to start working at a company full time. The good news is that we were launching the apple chips right around the same time. And so there was an opportunity for me in food safety to start developing some of the food safety programs in our apple chip facility, as well as doing some of the stuff here on the home farm, the apple farm as well. Because I had some experience with that.
Had you been doing some summers or something? Yeah.
So I'd been doing the food safety here at the apple packing facility for a little while. Yep. But the processing side was a completely different animal. Yeah. And I learned pretty quickly that I hate doing food safety. So I was not enjoying my job. The food safety certification that we have in Elmira, where we make our apple chips, it's called BRC, and BRC is very strict and lots of documentation and very scientific, which I am not. And so I felt like I was fairly over my head, but I got some stuff put together. Anyway, long story short, so I was doing that for about a year and a half, I believe. And then in 2014, we started doing some juice. And so
in that same facility?
In the same facility. So just with our expanding sales, expanding products, there was an opening on in the sales
Oh,
department.
okay. Yep.
And so Kevin thought that I was kind of a natural fit there. I had some
Nice.
experience just with the market and that type of thing. So I moved into that and really started enjoying it. I enjoyed selling juice into craft cideries. So I'd go out, visit people, and saw some like good success pretty early on. I was like,
Nice.
I enjoy this, but wasn't necessarily passionate about it. Part of the reason for that was I still had sports. I always had baseball in my mind of this is something I want to do.
Like getting a job in
Yeah,
baseball,
something
or
like that.
were you still thinking journalist at this point?
No,
or? No. Okay.
So I was thinking like front office,
Management of some
operations
kind.
type thing.
Yeah.
So in I have to think, it was 2014 or 2015. I actually put together a bunch of little portfolio things for 20 different teams, MLB teams.
Okay. Yep.
And with just kind of like, so this is my assessment of what I see from the organization and the outside, and these are some acquisitions I'd make or that type of thing for the off season. And I sent it out to 20 different baseball teams, and like basically looking on the internet for someone that seemed like they might be the right title and addressing it to them and careering it off. Looking back now, I'm sure they were terrible, but
did you like do a bunch of research to?
Oh yeah,
like you
very
were
much so.
Yeah.
And like I took an online stats course thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
To try and learn some of that stuff. And
were you into like the whole new? I mean, it's maybe not super new anymore, but all the new stats that are used and sabermetrics or whatever it's called, and were you into all of that stuff?
For sure.
Yeah.
So it's so like baseball's really turned into like there's so much math. So much math and statistics involved. So half of it I like it's over my head.
Okay.
But I love the concept of it, of tweaking tiny little things and starting to see some results and finding an advantage anywhere that you can and kind of rethinking an entire tradition of game. And you're seeing it across sports everywhere. So so some of that, but I'm sure what I sent was very amateur to what they'd be normally seeing.
You're competing with like baseball fans that have done whole degrees in economics and then bring that to a baseball team, and like, so I mean you had your university and then you'd done a statistics course online, so you're probably some tough competition.
I did a statistics course in university as well.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah,
nice,
I passed that with like a 51, I think it was.
Nice.
Pretty sure that was in that same semester. That was not a good semester. But so I actually heard back from a couple teams.
Nice. Yeah.
Surprisingly enough, had a 45-minute phone interview with the Blue Jays.
Wow.
And got to a second round thing with who was it? I think the Texas Rangers.
Okay.
Heard back from a few others as well. Basically, they said, so clearly like you have a passion and clearly you have some knowledge, you know your stuff, but you have no experience.
Right.
And so they said, well, you're going to have to probably start in the minor leagues, travel around lots of different teams. You're probably talking about like 14-hour days, 6 or 7 days a week, for very little pay.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I was interested enough to start. So I did some volunteer work with Kitchener Panthers.
That's a local
which is
baseball.
like a local baseball
team,
like a men's baseball team. They play in the IBL league and Intercounty Baseball League.
Oh yeah.
So volunteered with them for about a half season.
Okay.
And at the time I was dating Ainsley, who's now my wife, and I realized that this is the two worlds that I'm looking at: getting engaged, getting married,
Right.
and working in professional sports with potentially tons of travel,
Right.
not being at home much. That time, they don't really collide. They don't work well together.
Yeah.
Sorry, they do collide. They don't work
They don't
well
mesh
together.
well, yeah.
They don't mesh well. So I had to make a decision. And I was like, well, and I'm not saying you can't do it. There are people that do it, and I applaud them. But it also seems very difficult.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, you know what? I'm not sure that this is for me. So I quit with Panthers. And I took a good hard look. Like, okay, well, what now? But I answered, what was important for me there is I answered the what if. I answered the what if question of baseball, which is really important for me to get that out of my head. Because then I knew, or I don't know, but I'm fairly confident that I could have gotten a job somewhere at some point and moved throughout and become something in an organization.
Right.
I believe that to be true based on some of the feedback I got. However, I chose not to. I didn't want that. I didn't want that life. So that was really important to me.
You're saying that you didn't have to wonder anymore what if you had done that.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I think I could have done it, but I actually didn't want that.
Mm-hmm.
So then I'm back to, well, I'm working my job that I enjoy but not necessarily passionate about. And so then I started like, what is it about baseball or sports in general that I really enjoy? Mm-hmm. And so I started looking at that, and it was more assembling the team. So so obviously I enjoy the actual sport, but what I was really interested in was the front office part, right? So assembling the team, finding the parts that go together to create this thing that eventually becomes a success.
Yeah.
Right. And there's lots of different ways to do it, and every different team is trying to do their own way to do this. And like, well, a lot of that can actually be translated into business.
Okay.
It's similar concepts. You're trying to create a team of people, and you're trying to fill different needs and gaps, and you might see that you're not very good in this area, and so you need to try and acquire someone that will help you out with that. And it's building a team towards success. Like, and when I kind of was able to, when that kind of clicked in my mind, then it was night and day.
Okay.
Like I started being very excited about work.
Nice.
And love my job. I've always enjoyed working for Martin's. Partly I enjoy working with the people that I work with.
Nice.
Family. I get along with family. And just have a really good team of people there. Mm-hmm. So I've always enjoyed that, and now I love it. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah. Was that answering your question on like some of the significant steps, or do you have other things like the current position you're in right now as far as what's gotten you into that?
Yeah. So that answers most of that, I think. Yeah. And then so since then it's kind of been continually evolving. So at the time I was basically doing juice.
Right. Yeah.
And then I started. So that was with a lot of craft cideries, like I mentioned. We did a little bit of retail, but not a whole lot.
Okay. Then
in 2017 we got into fresh cut, so slices and dices for bakery, and so that was my baby. I started doing a lot of that. And kind of all throughout, I was doing some apple chips, a little bit of apple chips as well. But over the past year and a half, been doing a lot more of that. And so I've really taken that under my belt as well. And,
nice.
And focusing on that.
So you're still doing you'd said you're doing all three still at this point, the chips, the slices, and the juice?
Correct.
Yeah.
And so I guess the fourth one that I haven't mentioned is a new product called Saladitions, which is a healthy salad topper.
Okay.
So that one is just recently launched, but it's kind of part of my portfolio as well.
Okay. Nice. No, very good. So yeah, maybe you have a few more things on how you've changed and developed. I don't know, but you can also talk about some of the specifics of your sales role. So what are some of the things that you have to do in order to do your job well?
So it depends a little bit on which aspect of it. So with juice and with slices, there's so that's customer visits, interactions, that type of thing. So for those products, they need what we have.
Right.
They can't make hard cider without apple juice. They can't make an apple pie without apples.
Right.
So they need what we have. So then it's often a matter of price.
Oh, yeah.
I was listening to a book recently, and autobiography by Joe Ricketts, who is the founder of Ameritrade.
Okay.
And he said something, can't remember the exact quote, but something to the effect of, customers want what they know and have a comfort level for a cheaper price.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. So for that, and I would find that's very much true for those commodity-based products.
Okay. An apple pie maker doesn't care what the apples are.
They do to an extent,
Okay.
right? So quality is certainly important.
Yeah.
So quality is important, but if quality is important, or if quality and price are pretty much the same between me and the next guy, they're gonna buy from the person that they like working with.
Okay. Yep.
Right? They're gonna buy from the person that will go the extra mile. Will always pick up the phone. Will always help them out if they're having some troubles here or whatnot. So that's kind of my approach there. So it's a lot of relationship building, basically. You want to get to the point where they trust you and that you know their business and you know what they need, and so you're kind of advocating for them. So that's a big part of my role is just becoming friends with the customers, I guess.
Yeah. Do you almost attempt to become one of their team? Like that's almost what or that you're on the same team or something like that is what it almost sounded like you're saying.
To a point. I mean, so my allegiance always has to be to Martin's.
Yeah.
But it's great because the more I can learn about their business, the more I can help them.
Yeah.
The more I can figure out, by changing this, or we can help you become more efficient in doing this different thing. We can help you in these different ways.
Yeah.
And so I'm able to help their business while also still helping Martin's business.
Right. Yeah.
And so trying to find things other than just price to kind of set us apart. Price is very easy, but that's also something that changes very quickly.
Okay.
And so if I'm lower than the other guy, well, what's going to happen if he's lower than me then? So if your relationship is solely based on price, that's tough.
Yeah.
Because then you're just constantly trying to undercut each other.
Right.
So if you can try and get your relationship built on something much more than just price, then you have something. One of our core values is partnership. And then we have partners. We have people that we're trying to get them to succeed. We want their business to succeed because the better their business is, the better our business is.
Right. So you're thinking of when you think of partnership there, you're thinking of the customer as a partner?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Because we need them in our business,
right,
and they need us in their business.
Yeah.
So there is a partnership there.
Yeah, that's great. So is it you were mentioning the slices and the juice there, is chips different?
Chips is a little bit different in the sense that so a customer doesn't necessarily need our apple chips.
Okay, yeah.
It's an added item for them. It's an incremental sale, so it's something on top of it. So it's a good item for them to have.
Right.
But a grocery store doesn't need chips. They don't need. What they need is milk. What they need is butter. They need produce, that type of thing.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily need apple chips because people generally aren't going into the store just to buy apple chips.
Right.
Some people do, hopefully, and that's great. But that's just an added thing. They're walking down the aisle like, oh, apple chips, I'm going to pick these up. Or it becomes something throughout their process that they buy every other week or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
So in that sense, it is different because they don't necessarily need our product. And particularly a new customer, you have to convince them why they should list our apple chips versus somebody else's product.
Because usually something is getting replaced if you're coming in.
Oftentimes something's being replaced. Not always. Sometimes they find room,
Yeah.
but you typically don't walk through a grocery store and see lots of empty
No,
shelves waiting
no.
for new products,
Right.
right? So there's constantly turnover, but there's also constantly new products coming into the market.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so it is different in the sense of you need to try and convince or show the retailer why my product is better and will be better for them than maybe the competitors.
Yeah. So how do you convince a customer of that, or kind of what's your approach in selling them?
Yeah, so part of that is knowing the end consumer, knowing what the
Okay,
end
yep.
consumer wants. So keeping up to date with trends. Right now, I mean, healthy eating is a big trend. It's
Yeah.
something that's really shifted. So more and more retailers are looking for healthy foods.
Okay.
Which is great for us. We're a healthy food company.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it, is knowing what the end consumer wants, and also knowing the customer or the retailer, whoever you're dealing with, knowing them, understanding their business, and understanding how our product is going to help them.
Yeah.
Because if I go into a meeting and all I'm thinking about is, man, be nice for a sale for me, because then that's really good for us. Probably not going to get the sale.
Okay.
Because the retailer wants to know how this is good for them. Ultimately, it should be good for both of us.
Right.
But if I can't convince a retailer of why this is good for them, then they're not going to be interested.
Yeah.
Because they have other options.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense. Is maintaining a relationship with a chip customer, does that look different than the commodities you talked about with juice and slices?
A little bit, in the sense that with juice and slices, I'm often dealing with somewhat smaller companies, smaller businesses. Sometimes some of the retailers that we deal with or contact or whatever are huge.
Yeah.
So they're massive corporations. So part of me enjoys the working with some slice or juice customers, just because you're able to have a bit more personal.
Okay.
So I can go there, I can bring them coffee and donuts, I can take them out for lunch.
Yeah.
And get to know them, learn about their families. Whereas a massive retailer, you're not able to do that. You're definitely not able to give them anything or buy them anything.
Yeah.
Because that gets construed as bribery.
Okay. Yeah.
So you have to be very, very careful with that. So you can still build a relationship for sure, but a lot of it takes a lot more time to actually to get some of those.
Are you building a relationship with just a buyer then?
Yeah,
Something
generally,
like that? Yeah.
Generally. Yeah. And then if the buyer changes, then
Yeah.
then it's trying to get to know someone else.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else that you wanted to say on the specifics of your sales role?
So one thing I would say that I in the past haven't done a great job of, and still learning, I guess. So this is a bit of a tangent.
Sure.
When you talked to me first about being on the podcast,
Yeah.
I was like, everyday expertise. Expertise is a tough word, as I do not feel like I'm an expert at all.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm sure there's probably some salespeople that might listen to this and be like, you know what, I'm not sure about that level, which that's great. Contact me after, and I'd love to learn more.
Yeah.
And I hope I listen to this in 10 years and like, ooh,
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know about that. But I do like the idea of kind of just talking through some of my stuff as far as what I've learned over the years, which is why I agreed to do it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for doing it.
So the one thing that I haven't done a great job of trying to get better at is kind of completing the sales process or working through it the entire time. So what I mean by that is that making the sale that's not the end.
Okay.
That's the start of a different process. So I can sell apple chips to a major retailer. And that's great. So I made that initial sale. But how are we going to make sure that it's successful throughout?
Yeah.
What are we going to do to make sure that consumers are actually going to see the product and buy it and want to buy it?
Yeah.
So that's something that I've had to learn, in that you can't just go for the purchase order and then, walk away. Send them a message 3 months later saying, oh, how'd that do? You have to set up a good process to try and make sure that it's successful throughout the entire time. So you get it in. That's the first step, but that's not it. Then you need to try and figure out, well, how are we going to make sure that consumers see this? Whether that's trying to make sure that it's not on the bottom shelf somewhere, getting it a little bit closer to eye level, whether that's throwing some money into advertisements or sampling programs, or just all sorts of things. How are we going to make sure that it's successful once it's in the store? And that's something that I feel like I'm learning right now and trying to do a better job of, that I haven't always done in the past, because that's very different from slices and juice.
Right. Yeah.
Because again, they need the product.
Yeah.
So they're going to come after me for another order.
Yeah.
Whereas if it doesn't work well in, Joe Blow retailer, then they'll try something else.
Right. Yeah. So will you do? So I was fascinated by the idea of, is the product at a good place in the store and that kind of thing. Will you talk with retailers about where they're placing your product and that kind of thing, or?
Yeah. So I was always under the impression that that's a no-no. And recently I had someone suggest to me, so we just launched in about 200 convenience stores in Southern California.
Okay.
With the chips as a test pilot to potentially
they're doing
move
this
into a greater region, larger.
Okay,
thing.
so they might do more stores if it works
right,
well. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's something you want to work well.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I asked them if they could send me a picture of kind of it's us and a bunch of other products, of kind of their setup. How is this gonna look? And so they did, and we're smack dab right on the bottom.
Oh.
And so I was like, that sucks. That's just. But I was like, well, I guess that's just the cards that we're given, and we're gonna just deal with that the way it goes. And so someone suggested, well, why don't you contact them and see if you can get them bumped up? So I was like, okay. And this was like less than a week before they were actually supposed to be launched.
Okay.
So they had the product. They weren't setting up the displays yet, but they had all the product. I figured everything's done. He got back to me the next day and was like, "Yep, so we moved you up the shelf."
Nice.
I was like, "Well, cool. I didn't know that we could do that." So that's gonna be a new trick in my back pocket.
Yeah, no, that's great.
But yeah, so it's things like that that I didn't necessarily put the thought into before, of so where are these actually located? Because if they're located in the back corner and the bottom shelf, well, of course you're not going to sell any.
Yeah.
Nobody sees them.
Yep.
There's a reason that they put milk and stuff back there, because you have to walk past everything else to get that.
The thing that people are going to buy. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is maybe a little bit unrelated, but I was surprised by this a few days ago. I was in Dollarama. So I was there when some chip company was bringing in a delivery of chips. So, I mean, they don't have a huge display at Dollarama. But the guy actually himself was stocking the shelf. He didn't just dump off the boxes and let them do it. He came in and did it himself. Is that typical that chip companies will do that? Or?
So Frito-Lay does that.
Yeah, I think that's who it was. Yeah.
So they do that. They do all their own merchandising.
Okay.
And there's some other companies that do it as well. If you get to a certain size, then you can.
Okay, so that makes
control
sense.
that.
Yeah.
But overall, I mean, so we obviously don't have the size manpower to be able to do that. But,
right. Yeah.
But yeah, they stock all their own shelves.
Okay.
And it's a way that they can make sure that everything's always on the shelf.
Yeah, well, when you were talking about that, I'm like, oh, that's probably why they do it. They can have better control of how it looks, and I wonder if they consistently will put their flavors in the same order or something. I have no idea if they do that, but they could control that kind of thing too, I guess.
Yeah. So everything there would be what's called planogrammed.
Okay.
So every spot, every item is in a spot for a reason. So
Okay.
they have all the information. And so there's a reason that the chips are in the spots that they are and that type of thing. So
Kind of some of that, like we were talking about with baseball, with just a little bit of an edge.
yeah.
Those things make a difference, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. You can say more specifics if it comes up as we're going along here. But are there things that you specifically really enjoy about your job or your role in sales?
Yeah, so just some of the stuff that I've talked about as far as just customer interaction, meeting new people, learning about new businesses. I really enjoy that. I think it's always fascinating to learn about someone's business, and because it's something that typically they're really passionate about, and there's a reason that they're in this business. So I really enjoy that. It's great fun, and then try also just the thinking through our own sales process. How do we do this better? How can we make this product successful?
Okay.
How do we get into more retailers? How do we make sure that it's successful when it is in those retailers? So I really enjoy that part as well.
Nice. Yeah. That's great. Is there anything you don't like?
I like dealing with angry customers.
Yeah.
So if there's, if something went wrong on our end, say the quality wasn't quite there, or if there was a mistake, we shipped the wrong product or something like that. Like, that's never fun to deal with. It's never fun to try and figure out some of that stuff. I don't necessarily love conflict.
Okay.
And I don't necessarily love people being upset with me. So
yeah.
So I don't love that aspect of it, but it's part of it. And I also find that if you do it, or I've found if you do it in the right way, then it can only help build your relationship with that customer. Unless you're like constantly screwing up, then that's not going to help it.
Well, there's maybe other issues then. If
exactly.
That's always happening.
Exactly.
Are there ways?
And I guess I also don't like airports.
Oh, okay.
Fairly sick of airports. So.
Got you. Do you do a lot of traveling with your?
Not right now.
No, obviously not.
I've done more and more the last couple of years.
Okay. So is that like going to shows to try to get new customers, or?
Yep. So some trade shows, kind of throughout Canada, US.
Okay.
And then other going down for like a day or 2 days to present a product to a new retailer in person. Because there is still something about the in-person meeting where you can see someone face to face and have a handshake prior to COVID, that type of thing where it does help.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I remember when I was probably like upper teens, I would go to airports and thought that would be just the life, seeing those business people that were like seem to be able to fly all the time, but it's not what I thought it was. Or
so, I mean, I get that a lot, and that when people hear that you travel for work, it's like, oh, I think that's really cool. Which, and so I enjoy the traveling piece, but I enjoy it because of the work that comes with it.
Okay,
The actual travel is, like it gets long. It's very different than traveling for vacation.
Yeah.
Because you basically just spend days in airports and hotels.
Yeah. No, like I'm sure that makes a huge difference from what my experience has been. Do you have any stories that give a little picture into your experience?
Yeah, so I saw this. I have some great traveling stories. So there was one time I was going to Boise, Idaho, and I left my house at I think it was around 3:30 or something like that.
In the morning? Okay.
In the morning. And the day before, I was like, well, should I just get everything that I need from Martin's and then go straight to the airport, or should I go to Martin's first and then go to the airport? I'm like, whatever. I'll go to Martin's and then go to the airport from there. So anyway, so I'm on the road heading to the airport after being at Martin's to pick up my stuff. Mm-hmm. I think it's like 4:30 in the morning. I'm on kind of like a 9 a.m. flight or something.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm on the expressway, right where the collectors and expressway.
So it's still
here
in Kitchener.
Yeah, I'm still in Kitchener. And I'm on the expressway side. And all of a sudden, this is the middle of winter, but all of a sudden, like, we come to like standstill. We're not moving.
At 4:30 in the morning.
4:30 in the morning. And so, like, people are out of their vehicles. Like, we're like, we're walking around the highway.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Accident.
like 100 feet in front of us, there was an accident.
Oh, yeah.
And so the entire expressway part was closed.
Gotcha.
So, and it was that way for about an hour and a half. So I missed my flight
Oh, no.
to Boise, Idaho. And as you may imagine, there's not a ton of flights from Toronto to Boise, Idaho.
Right. Yeah.
So, I was lucky enough to be able to get one, and I ended up getting to Boise like, I think maybe around 1 a.m. in the morning.
Oh, okay. Like the next day.
So, and lucky enough, I scheduled enough time ahead of my meeting to be able to have some bad things happen.
Okay. So you still made it.
Yeah. Another time I was in, me and a colleague drove down to Cincinnati for a meeting with a major retailer there. We got in the night before, and then that morning, our meeting was, 11 o'clock, something like that. And so we went visited a couple stores in the morning, and then we were going to go to the meeting. So this was it was the home opener of the Cincinnati Reds.
Oh, okay. So it's like early April.
Yeah. And home opening day in Cincinnati is a huge deal.
Oh, okay.
Massive deal. And this customer is like right downtown, like minutes from the ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
So we were circling. We got to the meeting probably half hour, 45 minutes in advance, and we're circling and circling and circling trying to find parking. Could not find it anywhere.
This was in the morning.
Yeah.
Was it an afternoon game?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There's like parades and stuff.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So like it was my meeting. So my colleague dropped me off. He's like, oh, okay. So I'll go park somewhere and walk back and probably join you a couple minutes late or whatever. So anyway, got up to the meeting, start the meeting. They're like, was there supposed to be two of you? I'm like, yeah, so my colleague will probably be a bit late. Anyway, so we finished the meeting, like an hour-long meeting. And so I get down into the lobby again.
Right.
And my colleague is just walking in.
No.
So he drove down the 8 hours or whatever to Cincinnati to be my chauffeur, basically. So I felt really bad for him. It was like a good 45-minute walk to our vehicle.
Oh, wow. So he driven way off, found a spot, and then walked back 45 minutes.
Walked all the way back and then had to go back to the car. And then, then there's some where just it's going from Vegas to Vancouver. We had a Costco event in Vancouver.
Okay.
Early, I think maybe 8 a.m. in the morning. And we were leaving Vegas. There was some weather stuff, that type of thing.
Oh, yeah.
So our initial flight wasn't working out. So eventually we switched our flight to go from Vegas to Seattle to Vancouver.
Okay.
So that flight also got delayed. And eventually we got into Seattle about 10 minutes before our flight to Vancouver was going to go. And this is like at 11 o'clock at night or something.
Oh,
like
wow.
that. So we missed our flight.
You couldn't make it in 10 minutes?
Could not make it. So we ended up renting a car. We ended up getting into Vancouver at like 4 in the morning or something like that. And then had the Costco event at 8 a.m. And that's happened to me multiple times where I've had to drive like a couple hours in the middle of the night to...
Because you missed a flight or something like that?
Missed a flight or went to... There's another time I was in Virginia and like the airport was shut down. They were having some crazy storms and winds and that type of thing. And I just wanted to get home. So my flight that night was not going to happen.
Okay.
It really looked like there were going to be no flights the next day as well. So I rented a car. This is again at, I think, probably 11 p.m. at night and drove to Washington, D.C., rented a hotel for a couple hours and then caught a flight.
From there, okay.
So a couple of those that it's just,
Yeah, that's definitely taking away any desire that I have to travel for part of the job. So yeah, wow, that adds a lot of stress to it.
Yeah, well, a lot of stress, a lot of boredom too.
Yeah,
Like, you're just sitting there, and I think it's harder with family at home.
Yeah.
You know that you being gone is making things a little harder on your wife, and so
Right.
then, yeah, so that adds
Yeah.
to it. But that being said, I also love the work that comes with traveling. Like, I enjoy meeting new people and trying to get new business and that type of thing. So
Nice.
so
Yeah.
it's just one of those things.
Yeah, it's a part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything more that you wanted to say on your role before we look at some of the things that a salesperson needs?
Nothing that jumps out.
All right. So what would you say are some of the important skills or traits that are necessary to be in sales?
That's a good question. So being able to deal with rejection. If you don't like hearing the word no or like being rejected,
Right.
it's probably not the career for you.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of no's.
Okay.
So if you're only going after sure things, then yeah, you're going to be missing out on a lot of opportunities. But you have to get through all those other ones to find the diamonds in the rough type of thing.
Yeah.
Persistence. So particularly when you're dealing with these massive corporations, they you aren't their topmost priority.
Okay.
So trying to make sure that you're contacting them enough that they remember you, but not so much that you're being an annoyance to them.
Right. So you got to find a balance.
Yeah.
Balance there. Yeah.
I think it helps to be competitive. If you have a bit of a competitive
Okay.
streak to you, then or at least that's how I find. I'm a fairly competitive guy. And I think that helps as a sales, in a sales role. It's a bit of you're driving. You're looking for targets. You're trying to meet your targets and that type of thing. And so you need to be a little bit self-driven and a little bit competitive.
Yeah.
And then the thing that I've had to learn is dealing with cold streaks, because you're gonna go through some where like you're contacting people and you're just getting nothing.
Okay.
But so then you have the kind of the option to either kind of give up a little bit and say, well, like, nothing's happening, so I'm not gonna contact many people right now, or whatever.
Okay. Yeah.
Or like increase it, so contact more people and kind of work through your thing. And that's a bit of another sports reference in that. So athletes often will go through cold streaks,
Right.
where like just nothing right is happening. But it's the athletes that can try and limit those as much as possible and kind of work through them and keep them as short as possible. Well, those are the ones that are going to be really successful.
Yeah. And it was great hearing those things, like how they all connect together. So if you're competitive, that's going to probably cause you to be more persistent and keep trying at something in order to limit the cold streaks. So as far as persistence, will you keep going back to someone if they've said no, or is that not part of what you mean by persistence?
If someone says no, like just outright,
Yeah.
I'll usually try and get an idea of when would be a good time to re-engage. When would be a good time to usually
Okay.
if they're saying no, there's often a reason.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not the right time.
Yeah.
So okay, well that's fair. When is the right time? I think it's more honestly, sometimes when you hear a no, that's almost a positive, because means that they're engaged.
Right.
Right?
It's better
So-
than not hearing back at all.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
those are the ones that's really frustrating.
Yeah.
Particularly when, like, what happens sometimes, you make a connection at a trade show, and you think it's a really good connection. You had a really good conversation. They're interested in seeing more of the product. They want samples. They want to talk pricing and that type of thing.
Yep.
All this at the trade show. And then you get back into the office and like crickets. You hear nothing, and you contact them and contact them and contact them and contact them, and you just don't hear anything. So those are the ones that are frustrating.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So is it also part of, and you've talked about this, I think, a few times, of staying with customers that you have? Is that part of persistence as well, like keeping that relationship and continuing with the sales and that kind of thing.
For sure. And I think as time progresses, sometimes if you've been dealing with a customer for a long time and you almost have a comfort level, and you sometimes forget to put in the work and making sure that you're up to date and that type of thing. So that's something I think, particularly as I've had more and more on my plate, that some of that has, like, I'm not on the road to visit juice people as much because I don't have as much time as I did in the early days. But that doesn't mean that it shouldn't happen. So it might mean that it happens a wee bit less, but I should still be getting out there, a few times a year type of thing, and that type of thing. So
how do you keep track of all your ongoing customers, or who you've contacted but there's maybe interest and you haven't made a sale yet, or like, how do you keep all that organized and keep track of it all?
So in the early days, it was like just a lot in my head, and it worked that way because there's somewhat limited amount of people, and then I would try and remember, like, oh, it's been like 2 months or whatever, I should probably contact this person. As I've had more and more people that are more and more customers under my umbrella, I'm needing to start just, whether that's a spreadsheet, where I'm putting in notes where, like, okay, I contacted this person on this day, and I am planning on contacting them every 3 weeks or a month or whatnot, that type of thing. There's sales softwares out there that will help do that for you.
Yep. Do you use any of them, or have you kind of developed?
We have in the past.
Okay.
I haven't loved it. It's a bit of a joke at Martin's that we're paying for this thing that I don't necessarily like.
Yeah.
So I just don't find it super intuitive for where we're at right now.
Okay. Yeah.
So a while back I developed my own little thing that works for me.
Nice. Just on a spreadsheet, like yourself. Yeah.
Yep. So it might be a little bit more labor intensive than doing an automatic, but it helps me, right? It helps remind me of, like, okay, these are the people I need to be reaching out to and that type of thing. So
yeah, well, it's funny because a number of years ago, I started keeping track of my personal finances on a spreadsheet, and there's tons of, like, software for personal finance and things like that, and I've tried a couple of them, but it's worked the best for me to try to develop my own, and since I developed it's what I've used now for a few years. So.
Well, and that's the thing, right? It doesn't necessarily matter if one thing's better than the other. If you're not actually using it properly, then it's not better than the other, right? So even if your own whatever works for you, and that goes across pretty much all industries. You got to figure out what works for you.
Yeah, that's for sure. So this next question, how do the skills that are needed for the industry or the work that you're doing, how does it differ from other ones? I don't know how you took that question, but I think what I was kind of thinking with it is, would you be able to take your skills and go into another type of sales, or is what you're learning specific to apples and the products that you're selling? So what are some of the differences that you'd have to do if you'd go into another type of sales?
I mean, so a lot of it is, I think, is transferable.
Okay. Yeah.
In that it's the same process through the whole thing. You'll need to learn about your product. You need to learn about your industry, because as a salesperson, you should know more. You need to know more about your business than the customer knows. So if you're switching into an industry or a business that you don't know much about, you need to learn that,
right? Because
you're trying to sell someone on your business, on your product.
Yeah.
If you don't know your product, then, well, why would someone want to buy from you?
Right. Yeah.
So I think a lot of it's transferable. I was thinking about that a little bit. The one difference might be in the fact of, in some industries, you're like, salespeople are doing a lot of quoting and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So contractors and landscapers, that type of thing.
Yeah.
You're going to a job site. You're you're talking, you're doing the sale, but you're also then like doing some of the quoting for it too.
Right.
You may have a team that's doing part of that as well, but oftentimes, from what I understand, that could be wrong with this, the salesperson is also doing some of the quoting.
Okay.
And
Yep.
so that's a new skill. That's
Yeah.
something that that a lot of my pricing, I have to do a little bit of quoting, but it's not, I mean, it's mostly set pricing.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is that pretty fixed for what you're working with?
And we can tweak it a little bit here
Okay.
and there.
Yeah.
If we're adding in extra, if we know other costs are going to be coming in, then we're going to be adding a little bit or subtracting a little bit depending what needs to happen. But overall, it's more or less the same.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So do you think that you could sell anything, or as a salesperson, are you you've learned your product and that's where you're comfortable?
Yeah, I've thought about that. I've wondered that. I think if I could just sell anything.
Yeah.
I think like really good salespeople can. I think they can just do anything. I only have experience with one thing, so I can't say for certain that
Right.
I could sell anything. That being said, I feel like I'm learning about the process and learning through some of that. So I'm getting more to the idea that I could sell a lot of different things.
Yeah. Yeah. So there are things that carry across that are just part of selling.
Yeah.
That there's things along with it. Yeah. You kind of mentioned this in what you were saying before about product, but yeah, maybe speak to this a little bit more. How important is your knowledge and experience with your product and in order to be a good salesperson for your product?
Oh, I think it's huge.
Yeah.
I think you have to know about your product. You have to have knowledge. You have to be an expert in your product. Because if you're not, it's going to be really hard for you to fully communicate the benefits of that product for the customer.
Right. Yeah.
You're not going to be able to really tell them why this is something that they need.
Yeah.
And so either they'll try and find someone that does know more, because the person that knows more about their product will be able to add more value to them.
Yeah. Has that been natural for you working in a family business, or have you had to keep growing your knowledge and experience and keep developing in your knowledge of the product you're selling?
So definitely always need to keep learning and developing. And everything's a little bit different, right? So juice, that was something that I didn't really know, but I still am very, very, very amateur in as far as the craft cider guys, what they all do to the cider. And I've had many conversations, so I have a bit of an idea.
Okay.
But so I have a bit of an idea of what they're looking at for us, but I'm not a scientist,
right?
And they're using a lot of those terms.
Well, I was going to ask if you've learned like the chemistry of making cider and that kind of thing.
A little bit, but not a ton.
Yeah.
Right. But the reality is, I know it would help me if I were able to pick up a little bit more of that. And I can just provide more value for them. Right. Sometimes they have questions of like, well, I added, this yeast or whatever to the juice and it didn't react the way I was wanted. And I'm like, well, sorry, I got nothing for you. Yeah. So like I know about our juice, I know that side of it. Yeah. But as far as like their side of it, I'm farthest thing from an expert. But if I could learn a little bit more of that, and I've tried, and have picked some of the stuff up, then it helps. Certainly helps, right? And slices and dices, it's the same thing for bakeries. Right. You start learning about what they need and then how your product fits into that whole thing. Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting point you make, because it's not just knowing your own product, it's knowing how your customers are using your product and how it fits into their product and that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm sure there's as you get different customers too, there's probably different ways that's gonna change and that you could keep learning it. So yeah, have you you talked about some ways that you could be could have developed, but has it ever happened where you've gotten burned, or you've maybe had experience with other salespeople that are selling to you that that clearly didn't have knowledge of their product and it hurt them?
I don't do a lot of buying myself.
Right.
So not necessarily, but we have a lot of people that like will just randomly contact us for this or for that, and a lot of it's spam.
Okay.
But trying to sell us different lists for a trade show, say. So we can buy a list of attendees that are going to be at this trade show.
Okay.
So this is just a little example, but so I get hundreds of those emails.
Okay.
And they
sorry, just to clarify, they're guaranteeing that these people will stop at your booth, or what do you mean by
no? So they're just saying that these people have signed up to attend, and
and
the idea, I guess, is that you get their contact information.
So you can maybe make a connection with them if you know they're going to be there.
You can't, and you'll probably just annoy them like crazy.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the trade shows, all trade shows this year got canceled.
Yep.
But we're still getting these things. We're still getting these people contacting us to try and sell us lists of people that aren't going to this trade show that we also aren't going to. And they're saying how much that they've lost because they've paid for this, and so they're going to sell us to us for the discount. And you don't understand the entire, you don't have a concept of the industry, and that type of thing. Another one that we get a lot of recently is people sending us messages of how they can improve our website, or improve this or improve that by using, so I looked through your website and I saw like this spelling error, or this or that or whatever. And you could improve this or that. And that's not how you sell something.
Yeah.
You're going directly to my spam folder.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, and I've thought about it with, as far as a salesperson knowledge, maybe where I've run into it is going to a electronics store, especially like a big box store or something like that, or a sports store where they sell a lot of different products. Often it'll be someone that probably hasn't been working that long, and you might know as much about the product as what they do. And so I think that, hopefully if they stick in it, then they'll learn more about the products they're selling. But it's just very, very important.
It's true. And so with that example, I mean, so when you have one of those conversations, you don't feel necessarily super excited about the purchase.
Right.
You don't feel like you're getting a great deal, or like you don't feel super encouraged about this whole thing, because you're like, well, like I knew as much as that person did. He wasn't able to add to my confidence level here at all.
Yeah.
So you might still buy it, but you're not necessarily feeling the same. Whereas if you have a interaction with someone who really knows that product, then you can walk away thinking, oh, I feel really good about this.
Yeah. I remember when we used to work at Market with your dad as our boss. He would always train us to come to him with, if we were asked something that we didn't know the answer to, or something like that. And I've just thought about how that, for me, that taught me as I would come to him with questions, I learned about the products we were selling and things, learned the answers to those questions more and more. But it also, the customer then was getting Steve to answer their question, or at least it was going through him. And so he had
a bit more weight than the 13-year-old Logan and Rollins.
Yeah. No, but it was better than just us saying, I don't know the answer to that question, just buy it or whatever. So.
Yep, for sure.
Do you have advice for those that are interested in getting into sales, or think that sales might be a career for them?
I was trying to think about this. Not really, other than just get started.
Yeah.
It's like sales is so broad. There's so many different ways you can get started. Like retail. Retail is sales, right? And so when you start anywhere, you can start small. But if you're doing a good job, that's the beauty of sales. If you're doing a good job in something, you can start moving on up. You can start getting more responsibility. So if you're like going in I want a job in sales, no sales experience, and you're expecting to like immediately be dealing with these massive companies and that type of thing, and travel and all that, all the fun stuff that comes with it. Well, maybe adjust your expectations. Start small and work your way up. If you have no experience in it whatsoever, and I'm thinking more younger people here.
Right. Yeah. Get a job at Canadian
anywhere,
Tire.
right?
Yeah.
Because that's a start, and you get it on your resume, and you get it, and you learn how to interact with people. There's everybody you talk to has had a bad interaction with a salesperson at some point, where they just didn't feel heard, or they were ignored, or you go into a grocery store and you have questions, and all you see are people talking with each other and not like looking for customers to help and that type of thing, right? So everybody has a bad experience at some point. So how do you practice giving good experiences to consumers? Because that's what will have people coming back. So if you're young and are like, oh, sales sounds pretty cool, that's great. And that's awesome, because you can start anywhere.
Yeah.
Really.
No, and makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I mean, like anything, it takes practice. So you got to get started somewhere. So
yeah, and good. so I had a couple other things. So no sale is too small unless it's not profitable.
Okay.
So don't be afraid to start small again. And then also get comfortable with awkward conversations. Because particularly, so for me, when I started, there's a lot of, and still now, but when I started, there's a lot of cold calling, which is basically calling someone up out of the blue. And I don't particularly love talking on the phone. It's not my favorite thing at all. Something I've actually had to learn to do.
Okay. Yeah.
And so some of those cold calling, it's awkward, right? You're trying to sell them something. They don't necessarily want to even talk to you.
Right.
And how do you like get past the awkwardness and make it an interesting conversation for them? How can you do that? So I guess get used to it, right? Ultimately, it doesn't matter if it's awkward, as long as you're like still being respectful and still like being professional and that type of thing. You just feel awkward, so just get over that.
Yeah. Is there are there things that you've learned to say or ask that you do now in a cold call that you wouldn't have done at the beginning or anything like that, that's made it less awkward? Or are you just okay with that kind of thing more than you used to be?
Yeah, I'm probably just part of it is just comfort level, and so it's just a little bit easier. But try not to waste people's time, right? Like not coming across as the only thing you want to do is sell them something, because that's kind of annoying. That comes across as pushy. So showing an interest in them, but again, it's kind of all comes down to trying to figure out what they need. And if you figured out what they need, then you can communicate that to them and how you can help them. Right.
Yeah. No, that's good. Anything else that you wanted to say on someone that's wanting to get into sales?
I think that pretty much covers it.
All right. So this next question, I was thinking, you could be a buyer at a company, but we're all buyers of something if we go to stores or anything like that. So as a salesperson, do you have any advice for those that are looking to buy something or interacting with salespeople?
So I took this question when I saw it. I took it a little bit differently.
Okay, how'd you take it?
Well, I took it as like, so the buyers that I'm dealing with.
Oh, got you. Yeah. Yep. Fair.
And so for that, I had focus on partnership. One of our values at Martin's is partnership, and I think too often, and this is on both sides, sales and buying, you're so focused on trying to win the deal, right? That you forget that you're working with another company, and the best thing is if both parties win the deal, right? And so that happens with buyers as well. They want the lowest. Some buyers want the absolute lowest price and will just nickel and dime you down until you're basically not making any profit.
Right.
And like, well, that might be great for their one sale, but if we're not making a profit, then we're not going to be super excited about selling to them. Or if we do keep selling to them, we're going to be out of business.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And then it's not a good long-term thing either.
Right.
So trying to figure out what it is that both parties need and how can both parties win from this. So that's kind of what I like to think of as far as the buyers. I think from like just everyday scenarios when you're dealing with salespeople, I think like patience. Patience is something that you need to have. Recognize that, I mean, particularly if it's like a high school kid that's like trying to help you out at the store and doesn't necessarily know anything. Well, don't scream at them. There's a reason that you know that, or they don't know
right,
that.
Yeah.
So just have patience. People are so busy these days. But do we actually need to be busy, or are we just we have this sense of busyness? Like you look and like you see a long line, you're like, oh, I have to wait in line. Like, well, where are you going? Like sometimes you have somewhere to be, but not always.
Yeah.
So just have patience. Be just general life advice. Treat people how you would like to be treated.
Yeah.
And I think you're gonna get a better experience out of it, out of the interaction that way.
Yeah. Are there still salespeople out there that will be looking to take advantage of you or cheat you, or is that do they not last long as far as that whole win-win thing goes?
Yeah, I mean, so I can't speak for every salesman. I'm sure there are people out there. I mean, there's some industries that are kind of known for being a little bit greasy like that.
Yeah.
Some industries just you have a better I guess a better opportunity to cheat people. So for example, I know nothing about cars.
Right, yeah.
I know nothing about like if my AC goes or whatever. So if I call the AC unit guy, or if I, and he says, yeah, you need a new AC unit. Like, well, I'm going to tend to believe him because I have no other, I know nothing about this. So I think there's some industries where it's easier. And that's not to say that car and AC people are slimy. I'm just saying that there's opportunity, right? There's opportunity.
The knowledge that the customer has is
right. It's just the knowledge gap. Yeah. And so anytime there's a big knowledge gap, you can take advantage of that.
Yeah.
But again, when you get a reputation for that, then you're not going to last.
Yeah. It's a reputation will hurt even if it's not true.
For sure.
What they're saying, yeah.
Well, and especially with like social media and everything now, like, it doesn't take much, and all of a sudden you're mud.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you for the things that you've shared so far, and I've learned a lot just from your things about your life, what's gotten you to this point, as well as different things that you think about as salesperson that's selling products and that kind of thing. So I'll give you a chance to say anything if there's anything that we didn't get to that you were prepared to share or anything like that. But I also want to give you a chance to talk about or promote something that you're interested in or think that others should hear about. So I'll just see if there's anything that you'd like to say yet.
So I think I covered most of what I wanted to say. As far as anyone listening, I always recommend buying some apple chips, either our original or our cinnamon or caramel apple chips. We have the new product that I mentioned, Saladitions. So it's a healthy salad topper that is available limited, but it would be on our website at martinsapples.com. And I guess the other thing is that we are going to be, so we're doing in the middle of a refresh of our orchard market here at Martin's, and that should be up and running and open to the public in kind of by the end of September, I think is the last I heard. So when that's up and running, I encourage people to come out and check it out and buy some excellent fresh apples.
So I was going to ask, it's going to carry fresh apples and the other products too, like chips and juice?
So it'll carry all of Martin's products for sure. but definitely a bit more of a focus on apples.
Okay. Yeah.
And we're apple growers, and so you can definitely come in and get some of Ontario's finest.
So the salad additions, is that a play on like an addition to a salad?
Very good, Rob.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So what's in it? Are there apples in it?
Yes, there's dehydrated apple dices.
Oh, okay.
And then we supplement it with some pumpkin seeds.
Oh, nice.
There's some dehydrated beets, sweet potatoes.
Oh, wow.
Some like onion flakes. So it's excellent. It's
nice,
excellent
yeah.
on a salad. It just gives it a crunch, right? And
yeah,
I actually like eating it just plain.
Oh, okay.
So it's something you can do just plain. But anything that really needs a
nice.
crunch, it's
so what, you just throw it just onto lettuce or something like that, or?
Yeah, so I would say I had a salad for lunch today, where I had like salad or lettuce and chicken and tomatoes and that type of thing, and my dressing, and then I just sprinkled a bunch on top.
Okay.
Just added
so it was really good with that.
Yeah, it just adds in a little extra.
Yeah. All right. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing. It was a lot of fun to chat with you again.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for listening, and thank you Logan for sharing your knowledge with us. It was really great to hear his story and the passion that Logan has to continue learning and growing within his role. And I especially like the idea that he presented of partnering with customers and negotiating situations where both partners win. So thank you, Logan, for sharing those things. As I mentioned during the intro, I'm planning to invite Ricky back to the show for an audience question episode. Ricky is a graphic designer and has also partnered with me in bringing you this podcast, and he was my guest on episode 1. On that show, we are planning to answer any audience questions or share any feedback that we receive. They can be about the podcast in general. They can be about graphic design if you have a question from episode 1 that you thought of, or if you have just a general question about graphic design, then Ricky would be happy to answer that. Or they can be questions about anything in general, and we'll do our best with them. We're planning to record this segment on September 29th. So sometime before then, send me an email at contact@everydayexpertise.ca, or if you go to the website, which is everydayexpertise.ca, then there's a form there at the bottom. You can use that form to send a message, or any of the social media platforms that we're on, you can send a message that way. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, any of those, you should be able to reach us. I've really enjoyed the messages that I've received from you so far. So don't be afraid to keep sending those questions and comments in that you have for the show. I really do enjoy that. That's all for now. Join me again next week to learn from the expertise of everyday people.